We're going to ask everyone to mute their phone. Please mute your phone. As I said before, Zoom is experiencing an audio outage, so you can't join by computer audio. So we ask that people call in to join. You have to join audio by phone, and if it is full, because we are right at 100 participants in the meeting, if you go to the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council Facebook page, we are streaming this webinar live via our Facebook page. So our guest speaker today, our presenter today is Jenny Turner. She works for the University of Missouri, Kansas City Institute for Health Development, LifeCourse Nexus. And Jenny is going to talk to us today about integrating supports and setting up those supports to for your daily life. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to further introduce herself if she wishes. And it's all yours, Jenny.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. So good to be back with you. I was able to be with you guys a couple of weeks ago, and I apologize. My video now it started. So hi, here I am. Great to be with you remotely. I just want to take a quick second to introduce myself. I always feel like I want to know who's talking to me. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. You get to see some embarrassing pictures from my childhood too. I think that's always a good way to break the ice. So like Tedra said, I work for the University of Missouri, Kansas City Institute for Human Development. And one of the exciting things that I get to do there is co-direct the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families, of which Michigan is a member. So we work with 21 states now with their state developmental disabilities agencies as well as their developmental disability councils to really think about what would system change look like, what would policy, procedure, and practice change look like to better support individuals with disabilities specifically in that state. So it's really fun. I get to provide technical assistance and training and support for the good team in Michigan and do great fun things like this. So that's my day job. I think one of the most important things for everyone to know about me is that my most important hat is that of big sister. I have two sisters, one who is in her 30s and has developmental disabilities, and one who is 15 and was adopted from the foster care system when she was 4. And so I like to tell people I've sat at every seat at the table. I've been the family member. I still am the family member. I am a clinical social worker, so I was a support coordinator and a director of a provider agency for a while, and now I kind of work on the system side. So I try to bring lots of different perspectives to the table, but always have in mind my favorite people, my family right here that you can see, and my sisters who are the reason why I do what I do. So with that, let's dig in. We've got some exciting information to share today. My goal is to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. I am not a great multitasker, so someone's moderating, that's a better word, moderating the chat box for me. So if you guys have questions that you want to answer at the end of the call, feel free to drop them into the chat while we're going along, and then we'll get to all of those at the end of the presentation. So just really quickly, I think I shared a little bit about the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families. And again, Michigan is a member of that community of practice. And what that really is both training and technical assistance, but it's all of those 21 states coming together to share their thoughts, ideas, learning, and best practices. And we use the framework, the Charting the LifeCourse framework, kind of as a lens for that work. It's a way for us to think differently about how to support individuals and their families to really live their good life and their best life. And how do we create a system that has policies, practices, procedures, services, all of those things that are as supportive as possible for people and their families to achieve that vision. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the Charting the LifeCourse framework is overall. I'll share what all of these different pictures on the screen right here mean. We've got lots of different icons that we use, and that's what's on the screen right now. But then we're going to dig specifically into this one icon in the middle, which is a star. And we're going to talk about what is the integrated support star? How does that help us to think about the different resources that we have to support us to live the good life that we want to live? So charting the life course, what is it? It was created really by individuals with disabilities and their families to think about, what do I want for my life? What is my vision of a good life? What makes me happy? What am I excited about? What are my dreams? What do I want to achieve? The framework then helps us to think about, what do we need to know and do in order to reach that vision of a good life, and who might help us to get there? What are the different things that we need in order to support us to achieve that vision? So when we think about the framework, it really is first and foremost a way of thinking and problem solving. But we've developed some tools along the way that help to articulate or help to kind of write down or practice that thinking and problem solving. There's some educational resources, there's some worksheets that we've developed that can help us to identify what that vision is and to think about what some of those different supports might be along the way. Our core belief and the heart of everything that we do is that all people and their families have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. And so on the screen, you see lots of pictures of lots of people living the life that they want to live, people getting married and exercising and doing landscape work and golfing and working. And so we think it's really important that this core belief doesn't say all people with disabilities. It's that all people have that right to live, love, work, and play. We don't want to create a separate set of rights for people with disabilities. Instead, we want to recognize that people are people, and we all have the same set of rights. We also think it's really important that as we consider the person with a disability that might be the focus of our support, we're also considering their family and recognizing that families, we impact our families and families impact us. And so in the same way that we want to support people with disabilities and all people to live their best life, we want to take into consideration family members as well and help the family as a whole to reach their vision for what their life should look like. So I'm going to quickly run through the key principles of the Charting the Life Course framework. Some of you were with us a couple of weeks ago, and this is going to be a bit of a repeat, so hang in there with me if you watched a couple of weeks ago, and then we'll dig into the start here in just a minute. But for those that didn't or weren't able to join a couple of weeks ago, this is just an introduction to the Charting the Life Course framework. So on your screen right now, you see a person, and we believe that the Charting the Life Course framework, it starts with an individual, with a person. And then now you see a couple of different, more people kind of surrounding that one person, because everybody exists within the context of their family, whether that's a family that they've grown up in, a biological family, or a family that they've chosen. We all have people that matter to us and to whom we matter. And so when we think about a person, we have to recognize what's happening with the people around them, the closest people around them that's impacting their life, and how is that person impacting the life of others. That family has a way of thinking about quality of life and the different things that they want in their life. And so now on the screen you see kind of a circle or with pie pieces. And so we know that in order to have that full pie of a good life, there's lots of different types of things that are important. And we talked about this last time on the previous webinar, but there's lots of different life domains that we call them that we think about to really think about a holistic perspective, or really understanding all of the different pieces and parts that make up a good life. So daily life and employment, where we go during the day and what we do and what our routines are. Social and spirituality, who we're friends with, who we hang out with, maybe our faith or spiritual communities, and how we think about leisure activities and recreation. Being safe and secure, obviously that's very important as part of a good life. And so what do we need to know and do in order to be as safe as possible? Where do I live in the community? Is it the right fit for me? Do I have the adaptations and modifications that I need? Do I have access to the places that I want to go? Transportation, all of those things. Healthy living, so both physical health, but also mental, emotional wellness, fitness, nutrition, access to healthcare, those types of things. And then we actually just changed the name right now on the screen. It says Citizenship and Advocacy, but this is about advocacy and engagement. So really being engaged in the community and contributing to community life. And so we know that all of those different life domains make up a good life. And whenever we're thinking about a person and that person and their family, we're thinking about all of the things in all of those life domains that lead to a good life. And we know that in order to have a good life in all of those different areas, we need different types of things. Sometimes we need information, so discovery and navigation. We just need to understand. We need some training. Sometimes we need to connect and network with other people. We want to talk to somebody that has been there before and understand what's this like and get some affirmational or emotional support. And then sometimes we need goods and services. We need tangible things, material things to really help us to achieve our goals and think about what we need to do within each of those life domains. And so we kind of call those the different buckets of support. You see them in a ring now around the life domains, because we know that in order to have a good life, we need to fill all three of those buckets. We need the information and training, but we also need to talk to people that have been there before, and we need the goods and services. And in order to fill those buckets, now you're seeing a star, a multicolored star on your screen. And in order to fill those buckets, we think there's lots of different types of resources that we can access. So sometimes it's really tempting to go immediately to the Developmental Disability Service System or the DD agency and say, I need some services to help fill all of my buckets. But we also want to think about the different types of resources that can be a part of a full support system. So there may be some eligibility specific supports that we need from the DD service system, but are there technology resources that we can access? Are there ways that our phones or Alexa can help us, or some assistive technology? Who do we know? Who are our friends and acquaintances and family members that can help and support us? Where can we go in the community that everyone has access to that might be a resource in order to fill those buckets? And what are our own personal strengths and assets? What are we good at? What do we bring to the table that can help us to meet our needs in order to achieve our goals? As we think about this, there's now an arrow that's kind of pointing up and to the right, to that star with all of those different elements inside of it. We think about this across a trajectory because we know that we're all on a path, right? And it's easier to get where you're going if you know where it is you're trying to get to. And so we want to first think about what is that vision? What is the kind of life we want to live? What would be a good life when we think of all those different domains and all the different types of supports that we need? And how do we create some steps and strategies in order to achieve that vision of a good life? So that's what a trajectory is. It's a path to get to where we're wanting to go. And we know that along the way, we all are developing and we go through lots of different life stages. And so what's happening at each of the different life stages is we're growing from, childhood to school age to graduation and transitioning to adulthood. And then as we're aging, what are some of the key things that we want to make sure we experience along that trajectory in order to help support us to live the best life that we want to live? So that's the Charting the LifeCourse framework in a nutshell. I know that was pretty quick. But those are the key principles that we think about. And like I said, it's important for us to start with a vision. And so we use the trajectory to help think about what do we want, right? We talked about this on the previous webinar a couple of weeks ago, but really asking that question of what makes a good life for you? So if you were to ask me what my vision of a good life is, it would be things like having a job that I really like and feel is important, drinking good coffee, having plenty of water, right? Going on vacation, being able to see my friends and family. There's some things about what I want for my life that I think make up quality of life. There's also some things that I don't want. And I think that's a really important question that sometimes we need to ask of, but where do you want to go? But where do you not want to go? I really don't want to be bored. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be treated badly. I don't want to spend all of my time in my house. I need to be able to get out and do things. And so both recognizing what we want and what we don't want helps us to know what we need to do in order to achieve that vision, to achieve those outcomes. It helps us to set some goals. So on the screen now, you see a picture of my friend Ben, and Ben is getting a tattoo. Because part of Ben's vision for a good life is, you see right here in his kind of vision bubble, tattoos. And so Ben really wanted to have some tattoos. And so he had to think about what needs to happen in order to reach that vision. But Ben wants a lot of the things that many of us want for his vision of a good life. He wants family and friends. He likes going to concerts. He wants money. So he wants to have a job or to own his own business. NASCAR and WWE is really important to Ben. So is Pepsi and being healthy and fit. Ben does not want to be in poor health. He doesn't want to get diabetes or heart disease. He doesn't want to live in an institution or a group home. And he really doesn't want to be in a poverty situation. And so that is how Ben and his family and his support system make decisions, by thinking about, if we do this, is that going to take Ben towards where he wants to go, or is it going to take Ben away from where he wants to go? And I tell you that because I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Ben and the types of supports that were put in place in Ben's life that were really based on this vision. So it's important to understand, what did Ben want? What did Ben not want? And I think that's for all of us. We need to start with just identifying. And sometimes it's, what do I want for a good week, right? I just need to get through this week. Or what would be a good job? So you can do a trajectory just for what is a good, one thing, or you can think about big picture, all of life, and map those things out. We have some different tools that we went over last time, and I'll pop up our website at the end of the presentation so that you can grab those tools as a way to help you think about what your vision for what you want might be, what you don't want, what some of the things that have happened in your past that maybe have helped you to move towards that vision, or maybe taken you away from where you want to go, as well as to set some goals for what you might want to do moving forward. And then once you've done that, a great way, and here's Ben's trajectory, sorry. So Ben did a trajectory as well, and he thought about what has happened in his past life experiences that have taken him towards what he wants, things like family vacations and youth group and getting his high school diploma, volunteering. And he also said, here are some goals that I need to have. I need to work out regularly. If being healthy and fit is my vision for a good life, that means one of the things I need to do is work out regularly. If I don't want to have poor health, or I don't want to be treated differently, I really need to avoid sitting at home and watching TV all day and not going out and seeing people. And so Ben kind of thought about that first. Once you've done that, we want to think about all of the different life domains. Again, remembering that quality of life is not just being healthy and safe, but it's really being able to do what we want to do during the day, be able to live where and how we need to live, have friendships and relationships, have valued roles in the community, recognizing that all those things fit together. And that helps us. We have a life domain vision tool, like we talked about last time. Maybe you're not really sure what your vision of a good life is. And so there's some questions on that life domain vision tool that I've got up on the screen as an example here to kind of say, what do I want to do during the day? And how am I going to connect with spiritual activities or communities that are important to me? And that can help us to really decide where we want to head, what that trajectory points to. Once we've done that, then we can use the integrated support star. And the integrated support star is a way for us to both map the resources, or to think about the resources that are currently existing, as well as to do some problem solving and to really identify what other resources might I be able to access in the future. What are some things I might need to develop, and how can I best leverage, which is just really a fancy word for saying how can I really use the resources that I have in order to help me live the life that I want to live. So where did the star come from? A little bit of history. A lot of times we talk about natural supports and paid services. And we really felt like there was more than just those two categories, right? A lot of times when we say natural supports, no one's really even sure what that means. Like, what are all of the different things that make up natural supports? And are natural supports a good thing, or are they a bad thing? If I have too many natural supports, am I not going to be able to get the paid services that I need? But if I get paid services, aren't they helping me to develop natural support? So there was a lot of confusion about those, kind of holding those two things as separate options. And so we started to think about, what would it look like if we expanded the idea of support? And instead of saying it's one or the other, you have to have natural supports or paid services, we started to think about how can we have all of the different types of resources that we need in an integrated way? So having all of those resources working together for the same goal. And we use a star for a couple of different reasons. One, if you lose any part of the star, it's no longer a star, right? I'm not a great artist. So if you ever ask me to draw a star, my stars are always a little bit wonky, but they always have 5 points, right? There's always the 5 sections of a star, even if they're not quite even. And we think that's really important because we're not saying that any one piece of this star or any one type of support is more important than another. What we're saying is that we want to think about how can we use all of the different types of supports and help them to work together towards that same vision of a good life. The other reason that we use a star is because there's really 5 areas that we think are important, and we're going to dig into each of these areas in a lot of detail. So let's do that now. So the first area that we think about is that of relationships. So I bet if I asked you guys, and there's 100 of us on the call, so I'm not going to do that this morning, but if I were to say, you know, who are some people in your life that support you? Hopefully you would all be able to list a couple of people, whether it's a family member, so people that love and care about and are committed to you. Again, that could be a family that you've chosen or a family that you were born into. Your friends, people that you enjoy spending time with, people you have things in common with and who care about each other. But then also our acquaintances. There are people that we come into contact with, but we don't necessarily know super well. So if I were creating a star for myself, some of the relationships that I would rely on for support would be my mom, my dad, my best friend Anna and her husband Jordan, and then my neighbor, Miss Judy. And they all play a little bit of a different role. So we have to recognize that I don't expect Miss Judy, who is an acquaintance in my life, to support me as much or in the same way as my mom or dad does. But Miss Judy checks in on me. She makes sure that I'm safe. She watches my cat when I go out of town. So there are different types of relationships that can support us and that can help us to live that vision of a good life. Travel is really important to me. Remember, I said that was part of my trajectory. So if I put travel in the middle of my star and I was thinking about what different supports do I need in order to be able to travel, I might want to travel with a friend like Anna, but I want Miss Judy to take care of my cat while I'm gone. The next section of the star that we think about is personal strengths and assets. And so this is really about you. It's about what do you bring to the table? How can you support yourself in reaching the goal that you want to reach? And so there's the things that you're good at or that people like and admire about you. There's resources that you have or that you own, things that you possess that you can access, and there's skills that you have, abilities or knowledge or experience. So again, using my example of travel, I have a savings account. That's an asset that I have that helps me to be able to travel. A skill that I have, I'm a pretty good planner. And so whenever I want to plan a trip, I can rely on myself to kind of think about where do I want to go and what do I want to see. We also think about technology. How can we access and leverage technology in a way that helps us to achieve that vision of a good life? And there's things like personal technology. So those are technologies that anyone uses. A lot of us have called in on a phone this morning or we're on our computer. So things like that. There's environmental technology. So those are these cool innovations that are making our houses and our cars smarter. And you know, I have friends who can walk into their house and say, Alexa, turn on the light. So those types of technologies that are help us to navigate our environment a little bit better. And then assistive technology. So maybe some specialized devices that assist with day-to-day tasks. So again, thinking about my example of travel, whenever I'm getting ready for a trip, I rely on my computer and the internet. I rely on apps on my phone. Uber is another piece of technology that I use when I travel a lot. So we think about technology as another way of supporting us to reach our goals. When we think about community resources, these are places, groups, or clubs, things that anyone in the community can access and be a part of. So there are businesses and faith communities, healthcare facilities. There's groups, so the Rotary or Lions Club or Elks Club, Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And then there's government resources like public safety, social programs, things that anyone in the community can access in order to receive that type of support. And so for my example of travel, I can go to a travel agent. A travel agent can help me to plan my trip. I might join a group on Facebook, for example. There's a Girls Who Love Travel Facebook group, and so I'm a part of that group to help give me ideas, and that's a club that I've kind of become a part of. There's community resources that anybody can access. And then there are eligibility-specific supports, and these are either disability-specific, so they might be based on a diagnosis, things like special education or government-funded supports, and then there's eligibility-specific supports that are needs-based, so it could be based on age or gender, geographic, income level, employment status, things like that. So as I think about my example of travel, I might be eligible to join certain types of trips because of my age or because of my gender. I can go on a girls-only expedition. So we think about eligibility-specific supports as something that you have to qualify for. So when we think about the STAR, it's really important that we think about how can we put all of these different types of supports together? How can we use them in a way that supports one another? I'm going to give you another example. This is something that comes up quite a bit, is transportation. I know transportation is a challenge all around the country. So if we were to put transportation in the middle of that STAR and just think about how can we support a person who is needing to get to their job, for example, and transportation is an issue. There was a time when I think a lot of us, our immediate reaction would have been, well, can you, do you qualify for, in Missouri it's called, oh gosh, I just lost the name of it, but there's an eligibility specific support that's like a ride share, basically. So we can get you this service in order to do transportation. But now we want to start with asking the question, well, hang on a second, can you learn to drive? Do you want to learn to drive? Can you walk? Can you ride your bike? So we start with thinking about what personal strengths and assets do you have? And then we think about relationships. Are there any family members? Are there any friends that you could carpool with? Are there any coworkers at that job that you might be able to ride along with? And so thinking about those relationships that we might be able to leverage. Is there a neighbor that could take you to work and pick you up? And we think about technology. Could you Uber? Could you take a Lyft? Could you use an iPad or an iPhone to help learn how to ride the bus? We think about community resources like the bus system, like taxis, different things like that that anybody can access. There's lots of different types of support that might help with transportation. But when I think the STAR gets really exciting is we think about how one section of the STAR can actually build another section. So stick with me here for a second, but what if there were a disability-specific stipend or payment, an eligibility-specific support that paid for an iPad with some assistive technology that helped a person learn the personal strengths and assets to ride the bus so that they could then get to work where they made friends who then helped them with carpooling. And so we can use the different sections of the STAR to build up some of the other ones. So that's the integrated support STAR, and we can use it for lots of different things. What's really important, again, for us to think about is that oftentimes if we only rely on one type of support, so if we only rely on disability services, it may take us toward what we don't want. If we think back to that trajectory, it may take us toward that vision of what we don't want, maybe segregation or isolation or lack of choice. But at the same time, if we only rely on relationships, if I only rely on my parents and my friends and my neighbors, that may also take me to my vision of what I don't want. Boredom, loneliness, right? My best friends can't always hang out with me, and my mom and dad don't live in town, and Miss Judy is older and goes to bed earlier than I do, right? So we need all of the integrated supports in order to really achieve that vision of a good life that we want. But how can we do that in a way that makes sense, right? So I want to tell you a little bit more about my friend Ben. You guys remember his picture and trajectory from just a few minutes ago. So Ben is 25, and he lives at home with his mom and dad. Ben needs some level of support most of the time, just some support with mobility, as well as some of the activities of daily living, like cooking and things like that. And Ben does not feel super comfortable staying alone by himself. So Ben receives 40 hours. He has a capped service, so he can't get any more than 40 hours of personal care attendance every week. And there was a time in Ben's life, you can see now here on the screen this calendar, there was a time in Ben's life when he was getting that support from 8 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, because that's when mom and dad needed to go to work. Well, the challenge with that is that both Ben's mom and dad work about 30 minutes away from their house, and they don't always have the same schedule. And so there were times when mom and dad both needed to be leaving to go to work, and staff weren't there yet. There wasn't a way for Ben to have that support and oversight for the time when mom and dad were transporting to work. Another thing that happened is that Ben's mom had some health issues. And so remember, we said it's kind of about the person in the context of family and thinking about what's happening with the whole family. So Ben's mom started having some heart issues, and the doctor said, you have got to start exercising. And due to Ben's kind of physical challenge, some of his physical challenges, exercising with mom wasn't going to be something that he could do at the level that mom needed to do it. But mom was already working 40 hours a week, so how was she going to get another 2 hours a day out of the house in order to exercise how she needed to keep herself healthy and safe? So you see right now on this calendar, we've got this purple section, and that is the only relationships that Ben and his family were relying on were mom and dad. So mom and dad were responsible for getting Ben up and helping with breakfast and getting him showered and dressed and ready for the day. And then we have the green supports, that waivered self-directed PCA that Ben was receiving from 8 to 5. But we were recognizing that we needed to build some more color into Ben's life in order to both support the needs that Ben and his family had, but also Ben was kind of bored, and Ben really wanted to be doing lots of different things. And so over time, Ben's family started to think about, okay, what are some of the other resources? What are some of the other things that could fill up Ben's star? And how can we use that to plan for his day and to help Ben plan for his day? And so they started to say, you know what, Ben really needs, in order for Ben to have long-term safety, right, he really needs to be able to stay home alone for at least a little while. He needs to know what to do. You know, what if something were to happen and mom and dad can't get home from work on time? Is Ben going to be able to feel safe and comfortable staying home? And so they worked on a skill, and again, this was over time, this didn't happen overnight, but they worked on the skill set and the comfort and confidence that Ben needed in order to stay home alone. They also got Ben an iPad, so Ben can FaceTime if he's feeling nervous or if he's not sure about something, or if somebody knocks on the door and he doesn't know whether or not to answer it. And so they got him that resource that's both a personal asset as well as technology. They also got Ben a digital watch, so that there's a emergency kind of function on that watch. If something were to happen, somebody gets notified. And so that helps Ben both keep track of what he needs to be doing and when. They can set alarms on that watch to remember to do things, but it also notifies somebody if there's an emergency. We started to think about who are the other people in Ben's life that he's friends with or that he knows, acquaintances that he has, that we've maybe never asked how they might want to be involved in supporting Ben. And supporting Ben doesn't mean taking care of him, right? But it means helping him to do the things that he wants to do, thinking back to that vision of a good life and all of the different domains that make up that good life. Who can hang out with Ben and who likes to do the same things as Ben? Who else likes NASCAR and WWE and might want to do some social things with Ben? And so Ben has a twin brother named Matt. They've got lots of friends, Zach, Allie, and Chad, and all these different people. They started to think about, maybe we could ask some of those folks who have relationships with Ben, how they might want to be more involved in his life. They also started to recognize some of the community-based things that Ben did. So Ben was volunteering at the fire station every couple times a week. He also was really close with the coaches and staff at the high school in his hometown, and he volunteered with the football team every day. And there's an omnibus system in the town where Ben lives, which is something that anybody can access, but they do have some additional supports for people with disabilities. And so they were thinking about all of that, and they started to plug in some of the things that Ben might like to do during the day. And so you start to see the colors build here, right? You're seeing some time that's the blue time. And so that's the time that Ben is able to stay home alone while mom was walking, because she had to do that for her health. And so it really started out with Ben's mom walking down to the corner and walking back and checking on Ben. It was 15 minutes, 5 minutes at a time, and then 15 minutes at a time. And now Ben is able to be home alone for up to an hour while mom walks or goes to her exercise class. They called up some of Ben's friends and said, hey, on Monday nights, Ben really likes to watch wrestling, WWE, Raw, and Ben's 25. He doesn't really want to watch that with his mom. He wants to hang out with friends and do that. And so he goes to a restaurant every Monday night with his twin brother, Matt, and their friends, and they have guys' night. They were starting to think about, are there other families that we can spend time with? And so you see those relationships start to develop and Ben be able to spend time with other folks. About the same time, Ben had been going to the fire station with his PCA staff. And the fire station chief called and said, hey, Jane, that's Ben's mom. We really love having Ben volunteer here. He's great. He's been doing it for several years. I don't really understand why this lady is coming with him. Who's this lady? What is she supposed to be doing? Because Ben's staff was great. She was really supportive and nothing against her. But Ben had a natural support system with all of the different firemen. And so Jane said, yeah, I know, but if something were to happen, if Ben were to have a seizure, or what if there were some sort of a medical emergency? And the fire chief said, well, Jane, we're all paramedics, so we could probably take care of it. But it's a little bit scary, right? It's a little bit scary. So it took some time, but eventually they were able to work out a plan, because Jane said, well, yeah, that's great, but what if you all have to go out on a fire? And so they said, well, the receptionist is always here. What if we gave some training to the receptionist so that if all of us firemen are gone, she knows what to do? And so they were able to slowly, gradually fade that staff out. And now Ben goes and volunteers at the fire station twice a week, all by himself. But he's got that natural, he's got his friends, his group of buddies that are firemen. They actually, Ben's 30th birthday, so I said he was 25, this was happening when he was 25, but his 30th birthday was during quarantine. And the fire station drove by, they did a huge drive-by for Ben on his birthday with all of the fire trucks, and they stopped and got out and gave him gifts, and it was really cool. And so Ben has those close relationships. You could put them in both sections of the star, right? It's both a community-based and a relationship. But the cool thing about that is what that did is Ben still has 40 hours of staff that he can use, and now instead of that gives Ben back 5 hours of staff time that he might be able to use at another point in his week. Doesn't have to be in that same schedule, because he's receiving the support and the oversight for safety that he needs from the fire station. Well, Ben lives in a smaller town, and so it kind of word got out that the staff wasn't going with Ben to the fire station anymore. And so the coach of the football team called and said, hey, Jane, I heard that Ben's going to the fire station by himself. Don't you think he could probably come to practice by himself? He's been doing that for a while now. And Jane kind of had the same thing. Yeah, but what if something happens? And the coach said, well, we have an athletic trainer here. We have a nurse at the school. We'll all be okay. And so then they were able to work it out to where the coach and the team support Ben as Ben supports them with his volunteering every day after school. And so that even gave Ben back some additional time, so that they were able to be more flexible with his staffing schedule, because they were leveraging or using a more integrated support system. I think what's really cool, though, is to look now at Ben's day, and you see how the different types of supports are really helping Ben to have a more colorful life and a more quality of life. So he's going in the community. You see that dark purple, that's all the time that Ben spends out in the community. You see the red, that's the time that Ben really uses technology in order to have some alone time. You see this kind of other purple color, it's all of the fun things that he's doing with friends out in the community. And so Ben and his family really took that star and thought about what is the type of week we want Ben to have? What are the different types of things that are important to Ben and that make up his good life? And how do we build lots of different types of support in place so that he's able to do that? Just as another example, this is Debbie. And I really love what Debbie did. So Debbie she actually started with her calendar. So you see the calendar here on the right. And Debbie said, here's all the things that I need to do or want to do during the day. So she didn't color it in yet, but she put in things like I get up at 5:30, I do my laundry, I do some writing, I do some chores. You know, then there's some other things I need to, in the kind of early morning or the mid-morning, I need to take a shower, I need to go cash my checks and go to the doctor and grocery shop and clean my house and kind of do some of those things. And then it's really important to me to take a nap every day. I want to have some time to watch TV. Here's some of the fun stuff that I want to do. I want to read and make my own dinner. I like watching TV again in the evenings, and then I go to bed. And so Debbie then said, okay, if that's going to be my schedule. So she actually started with her schedule of what do I want to do? And then she colored in her schedule with the supports or the different types of supports that she needed in order to have that schedule. And so unfortunately, her star is not in color. But the green are those eligibility supports. And so Debbie recognized, you know what, to shower, to cash my check, to go grocery shopping, I need a staff person. I need a PCA to come and help me to do that. So she said, I'm going to use my green hours that I receive as support services to do that. You know, when I want to watch TV, I need to have a TV. So that's a red technology support. When I am doing laundry and dishes and I'm writing and making my own lunch and doing the fun things that I like, that's really a blue personal strength and asset. Those are things that I can do on my own, and I'm going to use my own supports, you know, my personal supports for that. When I want to go to church on the weekends, that's a community support. And I have a friend named Keith that picks me up and takes me home. And so I can use both of those types of supports in order to live the life that I want. So Debbie did a really cool thing, and I think this is a great idea for those of us that are, and we're all kind of living through this, experiencing the pandemic, is to think about what does a good week look like? What are the different activities that I need to or want to do? And then what are the different types of support? So really listing out all the different supports that I have in my life and coloring in that schedule with the type of support that we can use in order to do that. This is another example of my friend Peyton. Peyton is in school, and so Peyton's school said that they wanted him to be in a segregated classroom and pull-out classroom the entire time that he was at school, and that was not Peyton's vision of a good life. Peyton and his mom's vision of a good life was that he would be as integrated as possible into the full classroom setting, because Peyton and his mom both want to be Peyton to have relationships, and they want him to be integrated into the community. And so they wanted him to be around lots of different students and to make friends and to have all of those opportunities. And so what Peyton's mom did is she did his star, and she said, here's the different types of supports that Peyton has, the different things that we can access. And then she colored in all of the time outside of school. And she said, you know, mom's providing support in the morning. He's going to church and getting support or enjoyment from that in the weekends. He goes to Boy Scouts in the evenings, and he plays sports. And so this isn't a great quality picture, but you can see that he's got lots of color outside of school. And she went into the school and she said, I don't want Peyton to only have the green during school. So how can we use some of the red? How can we leverage technology? Not that he can't sometimes be in a pull-out classroom if that's what's really needed, but are there ways that we can use his personal strengths and assets, or that are there friends at school that can support him in a class? Are there iPad apps or computer things that we can do so that he can be as integrated as possible? And so they use that star to calendar concept for him to advocate at school. This is just another example of Pat. Pat did something similar with her self-directed schedule. And so Pat was wanting to decide, when do I need my staff to come and help me? And so Pat kind of wrote out what her day looked like and the different types of support. She really just put in the types of support she was using and when. And then when she did her schedule with the green, she said, here's what I want staff to come and help me to do. From 1 to 2:30 or 1 to 3, I really need help with home management. You know, from 5 to 6, I need staff to come and help me to cook or to go out to eat. And when I don't have staff, here are the other types of support I'm using. I'm using remote monitoring. I'm home with my family, or I'm at my job. So if you're wanting to or needing to schedule a staff schedule, if you have a self-directed PCA or self-directed staff and you're trying to figure out when's the best time for staff to come, especially right now as we're maybe kind of thinking about what re-entry, I think that's the word a lot of people are using, but as we think about maybe you haven't had staff with you for a while and you've had a lot of relational supports with mom, dad, sister, brother, friends, and now you're trying to schedule out another time for staff to come back in and support you in your life. It's really thinking about when would that make the most sense? When do I have time with my family that I want to keep that? When am I using technology and I don't really need a person to be here physically? And then what do I really need support with, and how can I schedule that in a way that makes sense? Another great example is planning for hospital discharge. So this is Barb. Barb was admitted to the hospital, and you see before Barb went into the hospital, this is her, it was all blue. Barb was really independent. She lived on her own, she volunteered on her own, she got herself to church and to her life group and did all the different things that she enjoyed doing. But when she went into the hospital, her needs changed, and so there were some different types of support that she was going to need in order to be able to come home. And so they did a star to think about what are the different supports that Barb has and that she could leverage. What are the technology supports like Life Alert? Do we need to put some grab bars in? Should we get a raised toilet? She has a cell phone, but do we need to get a walker or a cane? Who are the different people that might be willing to provide support? So her granddaughter, Rachel, some of her friends, the relatives, people from church or her life group. What does she qualify for? She's got Medicare, so do we need to access some Medicare staff, some in-home health care? What are the different community supports that we can access, and what do we need to be aware of out in the community? And so then they started to put together a schedule for, okay, how are we going to make sure that Barb stays healthy and safe when she comes home, and who can do all of this? Because it can't all be Rachel, her granddaughter. Her granddaughter was working, right? But Barb said, Rachel, it's really important to me that when I get my bath, I can't give myself a bath in the evenings anymore. I really don't want anyone else to do that. And so Rachel said, okay, I can come over in the evenings and help you with the bath, but I can't be there in the middle of the day. And so we're going to have in-home health come in during the day. So they really thought about how do we help transition Barb from being able to do most things on her own to really needing some additional supports coming out of the hospital. So we have these tools. They're available on our website. You can download and fill out an integrated support star. You can put anything, like I said, anything in the middle of that star. It could just be, you might just put your name. You might just put, Jenny. Here are all the different types of supports that I have just globally on a big life scale. Or you might put something very specific. I one time did a star on buying a house. And so how can I problem solve and think about what I need, what resources I have that will help me to buy a house. And then we have the integrated schedule planning tool. And right now it's a little bit weird. It's on our respite page because we just redid our website. So if you're looking for that, it is on the respite page, and I've got the website here. It's lifecoursetools.com. And then you can go to the respite page and you'll get these slides after, so you can just click on that link as well. But you can start any way you want. Maybe you want to write in what you want your week to look like, and then you color it in with the different types of support. Maybe you have a schedule of support that you already know. I already know that these are when these different types of support are available to me. And so you can think about, what do I want them to help me do, and how are they really helping me to achieve that vision of a good life? We have integrated support resources on our website that you can access. We have starter stars. So if maybe you're not sure what some of the resources that you have available to you, we've got some kind of cheat sheets that you can access. So we have all kinds of different starter stars for every life domain, because maybe you want to think specifically about, maybe your goal is to get healthy, or maybe you're thinking about moving into the community or into a new home in the community. And so we've got starter stars for all of those different things to help you think about what resources might be available. Again, you can access all of those by going to lifecoursetools.com, and we've got different tutorials and things that you can check in on in order to download those resources. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and let you guys ask any questions that you've got. We've got plenty of time, so feel free to ask away.
You can type your questions into the chat box, or if you like, you can unmute yourself and ask Jenny what you want to ask.
Thanks, Mike. One of the reasons that we wanted to dive deeper into this resource is because what's going on right now, we felt this was a really valuable resource for what's going on right now with the pandemic and people not being able to live the life that they were used to using, or live the life they were used to. And so we felt like going deeper into the integrated support star as well as the calendar would help people to be able to kind of be able to think through what you want your life to look like right now during this time. And of course, it's applicable at every stage, as with all of the LifeCourse tools. But right now, with the COVID pandemic, it's just really important that we can that we begin to think through how we can still have a good life, even though it might be a different life than what we're used to. So I'm also going to stop talking right now, and I encourage you all to ask Jenny any questions that you may have. We did put the link to the website in the chat box, and we by tomorrow the recording for this meeting, as well as the PowerPoint and additional resources, will be up on the website for this for these webinars.
Yeah, and Tedra, I would just jump in as folks are thinking of questions. I think you're exactly right. You know, a lot of us have experienced some of the supports and resources that we're used to, we can't access right now. You know, like I said, my family doesn't live here, and so I'm used to kind of relying on them for a lot of things, but I haven't been able to see them for several months. And so it's been really helpful for me to have that star when I'm feeling overwhelmed, or when I'm feeling like, you know, I need help, and I would normally get help here, but I can't get it there. So what are the other resources that I have available? What are some of the other things that I can access? And there's some really cool things that have come up during the pandemic that didn't exist before. You know, there's different like curbside delivery or curbside pickup and things that, you know, before I would not have used. And so I think it's been a good way for me to kind of capture what some of those new strategies and new supports might be to help me to live, you know, the best life that I can right now. How would you guys feel if we did a star together? We've got time. Let's practice it. Let's try it out. It could get a little crazy. There's a lot of us on the call, but I feel like we could handle it. So I'm going to actually pop up. Give me just a second here. I'm going to pop up.
Hey, Jenny, did have one question pop up here?
Yep.
I don't know if can you see that one? It says the presentation seems to focus on higher functioning individuals. How can we adapt with lower abilities and less resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think the thing that I really like about the star is that we start where people are at, you know, no matter the kind of level of ability or resources. And so I've seen stars even that that have some blank sections. And I think that's okay. It's a way to focus us on, maybe that's a priority area that we need to be thinking about developing those resources. You know, we have worked with a lot of individuals that maybe are moving from a more congregate setting or like an institutional setting, and they don't have any community-based resources. They're not really familiar with that. And so one of the first things their team did was start to explore where might they like to go in the community, what are things they might like to do, and starting to kind of fill that in. One of the things that we also encourage folks to do is to think about a split star. And so let me see if I can find a split star, but it's really just drawing a line down the middle of each section and having a now and a future kind of column in each section. And so, you know, from a skill set, for example, from a personal skills and asset, you know, Ben's a great example. If Ben would have done a split star when we first started working with him to stay home alone, you know, there were not, his skill set for staying home alone was not great. And so the now would have been pretty blank. But thinking about future, you know, we knew that Ben needed to be able to, you know, call 911, you know, whatever those things are that would kind of become goals. And so it's a way to think about development. You know, and one of the questions that we get a lot is, well, what if an individual doesn't use words to communicate? So how do we know, you know, how do we know what those resources are? How do we know what that person likes or is comfortable with? And I think that for me, it's really going back to how do you know anything now? You know, how are you learning about that person now? Who knows them maybe the best and can kind of help with giving our best guess, for lack of a better term. You know, what do the reactions mean when we do this and he smiles, laughs, throws something, pulls his hair, has a grimace, you know, whatever. What does that mean? And how does that then tell us what else we might need to do? Not sure if that answers your question, but that would be my kind of starting point. Another great opportunity with the star is to think about a community. So you don't have to do a star for a person. You can do a star for your neighborhood. You know, you could do a star for your city. And so thinking about what are the community-based resources that exist in Detroit? What are the eligibility specific resources that exist in Detroit? What are different types of relationships that people might be able to have? Because sometimes that also tells us as a community or as a system, what are some areas of strength and then what are some gaps that we might need to think about and focus on.
I do have a person that is interested in doing a star as an example, but is having trouble trying to unmute themselves. And so I'm going to try and troubleshoot that.
Okay, thank you. I forgot that little bit. So I am
That's
a
okay.
person, thank you. I'm a person with a severe mental illness, and I received services from the public mental health system for 14 years. And my life started off with, I had the severe mental illness, paranoid schizophrenia, since I was 17. And I heard voices, and I had unreality thoughts, and I saw statues talking to me, and people were following me, and I just had these symptoms from 1971 until 2006 every day. And then finally in 2006, I found a psychiatrist that could put me on very high doses of antipsychotics, and then I've had a lot more ability to have a quality life. But I want to talk about, we've talked about a lot of different stages. Sometimes I've had to go to the hospital, and yes, we've had to figure out on using, I haven't used the star, but I could see how I could. There are times I work full time, but sometimes I've needed to take a leave because of my symptoms. And so I could see how you could use the star all the time. But I do want to say that sometimes I have more needs for support than other times. Because in 2018 I was off for 7 months, I needed more support in my relationship. So the start of my relationship has been, for a while, I had one friend that used to talk to me. I need to talk about my problems. I'm a person that does better if I get to talk about what is emotionally bothering me. So I had one friend who was talking to me all the time, and then we needed to set boundaries in that relationship because I was calling her too much. Now I have a big support system. I have several people from church. I have gotten some support that are co-trainers that I actually met because I was doing training with them on the job. I have other coworkers that have become friends. And so my support circle has grown from having one friend and not much interaction with my family to now I have all these different kinds of support. Plus, when I got hospitalized, my parents, my dad was dead, but my mom and my 3 siblings and my 3 sons started to get very involved in my life. So now I've got family support, which I didn't have for years, because with the mental illness, sometimes you burn bridges and you're just too much for your family. But I have learned how to be respectful of everybody, learned how to have boundaries with my calling. And so I have all of these more relationships in my life. My personal strengths were that I live alone, and my personal strength is that I can keep myself happy for long periods of time. But like you used in your example, I had to learn how to do that. I had to try different crafts and different things to fill my lonely time, because I was very lonely and I needed to not always be calling people. So I developed reading, swimming, crafts, and writing a gratitude list. If I write down what I'm thankful for in the morning, at night, I don't need my natural supports as much. Technology. So technology, for a long time, I needed people to show me how to do things with technology. But now I'm to a place where I can troubleshoot myself. I use my computer for developing training. I use my phone for sending positive quotes to people. I try to be a hope giver. I created a presentation called Catching Hope, Hope Givers, Hope Receivers, and Hope Stealers. And so because of that presentation, I got 5 awards. And when I was getting all these awards through work and through the National Council and stuff, my family didn't think that I needed them, and I didn't tell them I needed them either. So now I use technology to communicate with my siblings, my sons, because I'm not able to see them in person, not just because of the stay-at-home order, but because I had surgery January 7th, so I stayed away from family and friends so as not to get sick. And now I'm going to have, and that was my last total knee replacement. And now July 13th, I'm going to have a right total knee replacement, and I'm staying away from family and friends again. But I am using technology to stay in contact. Zoom meetings. We use Team at work, and I'm teaching a speech class. Technology is just growing for me and meeting my needs. I'm learning more and more how to use technology. And I'm on this call because I take good notes, and I love person-centered planning, so I'm taking notes for my boss today who couldn't be on the call. And I thought you did an excellent job. Let's see what else is in this star. So community-based, would you say that would be my church affiliation? I'm close friends with the pastor since 1986. I have many friends in the church. And that has done a lot. The other part in the community, when I could, and I will be going back, is using the Waterford School pools and swimming an hour a day. I'm able to, I do have a car. Some people will say, okay, you're very high functioning. What about the low functioning? Well, I do have a car, so I'm able to drive to the grocery store, and I'm able to get my own groceries. But there have been times when I was so sick that I went into the hospital because I couldn't take care of myself. So hospitalization is a community-based, well, I think of it as community-based. Eligibility, now I don't really fit in that anymore because I don't receive services from the public health system anymore, but I did for 14 years, and I was able to get case management and support groups and training. And the public mental health system, the best thing they did for me was teach me about person-centered planning. If somebody can write their own person-centered plan, or even if you're writing it down and they're telling you their goals, their dreams, their wants, their quality of life can definitely go up, like the gentleman that we heard today. My dream job that I wanted was to be a trainer, education specialist, a motivational speaker. And I had that dream in 1983, and it took 20 years to get this job in 2003 that I now have at Oakland Community Health Network. It was just a dream in 1983, but then I figured out what I needed to do to make my dream come true. Go to college, volunteer to get used to working 40 hours a week because I wanted a full-time job. I did a lot of things to help me get ready for things like the gentleman we heard today. So I wasn't always this high-functioning individual. When I was raising my 3 kids alone when they were 7, 5, and 4, I left their husband when they were 7, 5, and 4, I mean my husband, because he was violent. I was too sick to go to work, and so I went to school, and a lot of times I went to school part-time, even though I was signing up for full-time, and I would get incompletes. It took me 8 years to get my college degree. Psychiatrist said I would never, ever get a college degree or work. So I just want to leave you with that. We touched on all parts of the STAR, and I don't know when this ends, so I don't want to go over the time. But thank you for letting me share, and I just want to give hope to people that if you have someone that we try not to use the word not functioning or not high functioning, because we try to think of their abilities. So try to think of everything they can do right now, even though in your mind you might think they're low functioning, they really aren't. They have abilities, and they can go from a few abilities to many abilities like I have. I did not blossom overnight. It took time. That dream was in 1983. It came to fruition in 2003, 20 years later. So I just want to encourage everybody, thank you very much for an excellent training, and go and all be hope givers. Thank you.
Sherry, thank you so much for sharing. Really, really appreciate that. And you know, I love so many things about what you said, but you know, just in a couple minutes, we were able to list a lot of different resources. And so like you said, we all have good days and bad days. And so when you have a bad day, you can pull out this STAR. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send it to Tedra to send to you. And you know all of the different resources, because sometimes we forget, right? It's hard to remember. And so you can pull this out and say, here's all the different things that I have available to me. And like you said, sometimes it's just remembering I'm good at stuff too, you know? So I really appreciate you sharing. I think this was such a great example, and I love what you said. You had a dream, and you thought about what you needed to know and do, to reach that dream and to go on your journey. So thanks, Sherry, so much.
Jenny, there is a question from Facebook that Tracy can hopefully read to us. Trace?
Yeah. So there's a question from Amy, and she asked, this is for Jenny, are these support planning tools used by independent facilitators in your state?
So we actually don't have independent facilitation in Missouri the same way you have it in Michigan, but they are absolutely open source. You can use them for independent facilitation, and I know that on our webinar a couple weeks ago, Angela Martin talked a lot about independent facilitation and how that's an option. So I would encourage you to check out that recording from June 4th. I think Michael was putting the links in the chat box. But yes, absolutely. These could be a great resource for independent facilitation. Facilitators could use them, or you could also, we have a lot of folks who use the tools as a way to prepare for a meeting, no matter who's facilitating it. And so even, just like we just did with Sherry, just kind of thinking through what are the different resources I have and taking that to a planning meeting so that you have that to pull out. Once you kind of set your goals and outcomes, you can pull that out and say, okay, how can we make that happen? Or, even before you set your goals and outcomes, doing that trajectory to think about what the vision might be. You'll still have to translate it into the required, the required forms. Unfortunately, Medicaid doesn't. They don't see. They see the value in this, absolutely, but it's kind of like a pre-planning tool, not necessarily a formal tool. But I think that a lot of the information you need from your formal forms can really be gathered in this quick, informal, easy to use visual way.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions? Will we receive a certificate of attendance? We do not have a certificate of attendance. However, if you need something that shows that you attended today, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and I would gladly work on getting you something if that's necessary, if you need to prove that you were on with us today. Okay, I'm putting my email in right now, and if you can just send me an email and tell me what you need, I will gladly get it to you. Well, I would like to thank you, Jenny, for being with us for half of June. It was really great information, and as we said at the last webinar, Michigan is a LifeCourse state, we'll call it. We're part of the community of practice, and we do have people in the state that can give presentations. Right now, they would all be remote. If you are interested in having a presentation on the LifeCourse, I'm putting my colleague Tracy Vincent, I'm putting her information in the chat right now. You can reach out to her by email, and she can help you get something scheduled, help you get a presentation scheduled. We really appreciate Jenny being with us today. Our webinar topic for next week, which is Thursday, June 25th, we'll have someone from Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Administration that's part of MDHHS. They'll be coming to talk with us or present to us on the Medicaid waivers and the changes that are happening with Medicaid in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we hope that you will join us to get that information about what changed in Medicaid or what has changed in Medicaid right from the source. Again, that's next Thursday, June 25th at 11. And all of the information will be sent out by email and Facebook as always. Thank you so much for joining. Bye, Jenny.
Bye, thanks guys, great to be with you.